I was sitting in the family room watching television when my son-in-law walked in and switched it off without a word. "Go to your room," he said coldly. "This living room belongs to me now." My daughter didn't argue. She couldn't even look at me. I stood up quietly, picked up my keys, and walked out without saying a word. The next morning, the doorbell rang. A man in a sharp suit stood outside, holding a folder with my name on it. And in that moment, I realized walking away the night before had started something he could never control. Before we continue, welcome to my channel. I share powerful real-life stories every day. If stories like this move you, please subscribe and like the video. It truly helps the channel grow. Now, let's go back to what happened next. Because if you stay till the end, you'll understand why walking out that night changed everything. The sound was small, almost harmless. Just a click. But when the television went dark, the silence that followed felt violent, like something had been taken from me, not turned off. I was sitting in my usual chair, the one by the window with the green fabric worn smooth at the arms. I had bought it years ago with my first survivor's check, back when grief still echoed louder than voices. A cup of coffee cooled on the side table. The kitchen smelled faintly of baked peaches. The evening news murmured softly low enough not to disturb anyone. This was my hour, the only one I still had. The front door slammed. I didn't turn my head. I didn't need to. I recognized the weight of those steps, the confidence of someone who had never paid for what he claimed. Derek crossed the room like he owned it, stopping directly in front of the television, blocking my view as if I were an inconvenience instead of a person. He picked up the remote. "Click. Go to your room," he said casually. Not angry, not shouting. "This living room is mine now. I've got the game on." He had no idea that sentence would cost him everything. For a moment, I wondered if I'd misheard him, not because the words were unclear, but because humiliation usually arrives dressed as concern or jokes. This came bare. I looked past him, toward the kitchen. My daughter stood there holding grocery bags, the plastic stretched tight against her fingers. Her shoulders sagged. Her eyes were fixed on the floor, like it might offer her an escape. She didn't look at me. She didn't say a word. That silence landed harder than his words. And then it hit me quietly, sharply. In that moment, I realized I wasn't just losing my home. I was losing my place in her life. I waited. One sentence would have been enough. "Don't speak to my mother that way. This is her house." Nothing. 35 years working with property records teaches you something important. Noise means nothing. Paper means everything. But standing there, I didn't think about law or ownership. I felt something colder settle in my chest, not rage, not sorrow. Clarity. I stood up slowly. My knees clicked, dry and unmistakable, like a stamp pressed onto a document. Derek had already dropped onto the couch, opening a soda, adjusting himself comfortably in a house he didn't own. In his world, I had faded into background furniture useful when silent. I walked past him without a word. Not to cry, not to hide, not to obey. In my bedroom, I opened the bottom drawer and pulled out the leather pouch I used for important papers. From beneath folded letters and old receipts, I removed a blue folder held together with an elastic band. Inside was the deed. My name. Still there. Unchallenged. Undeniable. But more than that, for the first time that evening, the house felt like mine again. I caught my reflection in the mirror. Short grey hair, sensible blouse, glasses hanging from a chain. I looked like the woman people underestimate, the one who bakes, gives, forgives. That had been my camouflage. As long as I kept feeding the wolves, they felt like kings. I closed the folder, returned to the living room. The sports channel was blaring now. Derek laughed loudly at something on screen. My daughter clattered dishes in the kitchen, choosing noise over courage. I didn't look at either of them. I walked straight to the front door. Taking a stroll? Derek sneered. Careful not to get lost. I didn't answer. I turned the lock. Paused. Let my eyes pass over the framed river print. The rug I vacuumed every Saturday. My daughter's reflection caught briefly in the microwave door. Then I stepped outside and closed the door behind me. Not slammed. Closed. Like a sentence ending exactly where it should. The evening air was cool and steady. I locked the gate from the outside and walked to the street. When the cab pulled up, the driver asked where I was going. The Grand Hyatt, I said. As the car pulled away, my phone vibrated in my hand. My fingers weren't shaking from fear. They were shaking from something I hadn't felt in years. Control. I scrolled to a name I trusted completely, an attorney I hadn't needed in a long time. Because when someone tells you, this living room is mine now, they're not just claiming space. They're daring you to respond. By the time the doorbell rang the next morning, the locks were already useless to them. I slept better that night than I had in years. Not because the hotel bed was softer, though it was, but because no one could tell me to lower my voice, change the channel, or explain myself. I ordered soup, turned the television to exactly the volume I liked, and let the silence belong to me. Still, sleep didn't erase awareness. For a brief moment, lying there in the dark, I wondered what Derek would try next. Men like him don't accept endings quietly. They escalate. They bluff. They look for leverage. By morning, that thought didn't scare me, but it sharpened me. At precisely 8 o'clock, I sat across from Andrew Sterling in his glass-walled office. He skimmed the documents carefully, slower than necessary. That pause wasn't hesitation, it was responsibility. You understand, he said finally. Once this starts, there's no soft landing. That's the point, I replied. He nodded, then added something that mattered. Just know this cutting access will force their hand. People react badly when comfort disappears. I'm aware, I said. And I was. The papers were printed. Clean language. No emotion. Termination of permissive occupancy. 30 days to vacate. Consequences outlined with uncomfortable precision. I signed without flourish. My hand didn't shake. Roman will serve it, Andrew said, gesturing toward a young man adjusting his cufflinks. He won't debate. He won't explain. Good, I said. There's nothing to discuss. I stayed in the reception area after they left. Waiting felt right. Somewhere across town, a doorbell was about to ring, and the house would hear a different kind of authority. At 9:32 a.m., my phone vibrated. My daughter's name. I didn't answer immediately. I wanted to hear what calm felt like before it shattered. Then I picked up. Mama, her voice cracked. There's a man here with papers. Derek is yelling. What is happening? Where are you? Derek's shouting spilled through the line loud, frantic, indignant. A man discovering that volume doesn't equal control. Tell him to lower his voice, I said evenly, and read the notice. She inhaled sharply. It says eviction, 30 days. Mama, have you lost your mind? For the first time in years, I said. I've found it. She pleaded. Please come home, we can talk. He didn't mean it. He was stressed. Stress doesn't grant ownership, I replied. The paper explains everything. Then I ended the call. The silence afterward was clean. Controlled. Andrew glanced over. That won't calm them. I'm not aiming for calm, I said. I'm aiming for reality. That's when the next step began to feel less ceremonial and more dangerous. About the utilities, Andrew said slowly. We can suspend what's in your name. But understand this is pressure. They'll react. I expect them to, I said. Then proceed carefully. Internet, cable, sports package, supplementary card. Suspended not cancelled. Reversible but firm. I wasn't burning the house down. I was closing the valves. By lunchtime, messages were arriving in waves. Come home. You're humiliating us. The internet is dead. I turned my phone face down. Instead, I went shopping. Not indulgently, strategically. Clothes that didn't apologize. Shoes that announced each step. This wasn't revenge dressing. It was armor. While I ate slowly, no rushing, no guilt, my phone buzzed again. A bank alert. Transaction declined. Seconds later, a message followed. The card isn't working. We're at the register. I stared at the screen for a long moment before replying. It's not a malfunction. It's a boundary. Back at the hotel, the room felt different than it had the night before. Less like escape. More like command center. Still, a thought surfaced, quiet but sharp. This wasn't just about Derek anymore. My daughter wasn't afraid of losing the house. She was afraid of losing the life it provided. That realization settled heavily. It explained her silence, her panic, her sudden urgency. By late afternoon, the call came from reception. Your daughter is in the lobby, the clerk said carefully. She says it's urgent. I looked at my reflection in the mirror, straight spine. Steady eyes. She thinks this is about money, I said softly to myself. I picked up my keys. She thought this was about money. That's what people think, right before they lose everything else. The elevator ride down felt longer than it should have. Not because I was nervous, but because I knew exactly what was waiting for me at the bottom. When doors close, people rehearse. When they open, the truth slips out. The doors parted softly. My daughter was pacing near the couches. Her phone clenched in her hand like a lifeline. Her blouse was wrinkled, hair pulled back too tightly, dark shadows under her eyes. She looked like someone who hadn't slept, not from guilt, but from fear of instability. She saw me and stopped mid-step. Mama, she said, relief rushing into her voice. Finally. I didn't move toward her. I didn't open my arms. I pointed calmly to an armchair. Sit, I said. We'll speak properly. She obeyed. That alone told me how much had already shifted. What is all this? She blurted. The internet is gone. The card won't work. Derek is losing it. People saw us at the store. This is humiliating. I took my time before answering. The lobby hummed softly around us, cups clinking, footsteps passing, voices kept low. Order has a sound when you listen closely. This isn't humiliation, I said. This is separation. Her face tightened. You're punishing us. No, I replied. I'm stopping. She leaned forward, lowering her voice, using the tone people reserve for children and the elderly. He had a bad day. You know how he gets. He already said he was sorry. Let's go home. I'll make tea. We'll talk like family. There it was, the script that had smoothed everything over for years. I'm not offended, I said. I'm finished. Her eyes widened. Finished with what? With funding a life that erases me, I said evenly. The house is mine. You've lived there for 4 years without a lease. You have 30 days to move out. She inhaled sharply. You can't do that. I already have. Her voice trembled. He needs the internet. He works from home. You're destroying his career. He'll work elsewhere. I replied. What you're losing wasn't a necessity. It was comfort paid for by me. She whispered, You're being cruel. Cruel was being told to go to my room in my own house, I said, while you stood silent. Her mouth opened, then closed. We were saving, she said finally, for our own place. I tilted my head. Where is it? Her eyes drifted away. He said it was invested, she murmured. Business things. Then tomorrow at 10, I said. You'll both explain it to me. At the attorney's office. Her head snapped up. You brought a lawyer into this. I brought structure, I corrected. Family doesn't mean chaos with benefits. Her shoulders sagged. Then she said the sentence she'd been holding back. If we leave, she whispered, he says he'll divorce me. I leaned forward and covered her hands briefly. If your marriage survives on my house and my money, it's not a marriage. It's leverage. She pulled her hands away as if burned. You've changed, she said. You're cold. I'm precise, I replied. And precision feels cold when you've lived inside excuses. She sat back, breathing unevenly. Just turn the internet back on. She tried one last time. Please, I can't handle this. You've been handling it by letting someone else shout, I said gently. Now you'll hear yourself. We sat in silence. People passed, glanced, then looked away. No spectacle, just a line being drawn. She stood slowly. I'll be there tomorrow, she said. 10 o'clock. Be on time. As she turned toward the exit, something unsettled me. Behind her certainty, I sensed fear not of losing the house, but of what Derek would do when he realized control was slipping. Clarity doesn't remove consequences. It only makes them unavoidable. She hesitated once more, searching my face for the version of me who would soften. She didn't find her. When she left, I remained seated, spine straight, hands steady, aware now that the next step wouldn't just be uncomfortable. It would be dangerous. The next morning, she walked into the attorney's office with her husband. By the time she walked out, she would learn what he was capable of. The conference room was colder than the lobby. Not in temperature, in intent. Every sound mattered here. The scrape of a chair, the click of a pen, the steady hum of air conditioning that refused to soften silence. This was a room built for endings. I arrived first. My folder sat centered on the table, deed, notice, timeline. No decorations, no softness. I sat upright, hands folded, breathing measured. Calm doesn't come from confidence alone. It comes from preparation. Andrew Sterling sat to my right, reviewing documents. He spoke without looking up. If this turns aggressive, he said quietly, don't engage. Let me stop it. I understand, I replied. And I did. But understanding didn't mean denial. Clarity doesn't remove danger. It makes it visible. The door opened. Derek entered first. His confidence wasn't gone, just damaged, like something cracked but still sharp. Shirt wrinkled, tie loose, jaw tight. He scanned the room, annoyed it wasn't centered on him. My daughter followed a step behind. She looked smaller here, not weaker, just stripped of insulation. Rooms like this don't allow illusions to survive. Let's get this over with, Derek said, dropping into the chair. This is absurd. Andrew waited until the silence forced attention. This meeting concerns the termination of permissive occupancy, he said evenly. The property owner has exercised her legal right. Derek snorted. We lived there for years. That counts. Not without a lease, Andrew replied. Which you do not have. Derek turned to me, eyes sharp. You really called a lawyer on your own family. I called the rules, I said. He laughed short, brittle. You can't just do this. There are rights. Yes, I said calmly. That's why we're here. He leaned back, arms crossed. We paid bills, fixed things, improved that house. You consumed, I replied. You didn't invest. Andrew slid a document forward. The notice is valid. 30 days. Failure to vacate triggers eviction and recovery of market rent. That's illegal, Derek snapped. She cut internet. That's harassment. Internet is not a protected utility, Andrew said. And the accounts were hers. Derek's gaze snapped to my daughter. Tell them about the savings. The investments. The room shifted. I turned not to him but to her. Where is the money? I asked. She swallowed. He said it was tied up. I opened my folder and slid the papers across. Loan defaults. Broker statements. Margin call. The paper stopped in front of her. Read, I said. Her eyes moved quickly then slowed. Her breathing changed. There's nothing, she whispered. It's gone. Derek leaned forward. The market would have corrected. You lost it, I said quietly, and you hid behind my house while you did. His fists clenched. You don't understand business. I understand leverage, I replied. And you thought fear would buy you time. The room went still. Andrew spoke carefully. Any further communication will be in writing. Harassment or threats will be documented. Derek stood abruptly. The chair shrieked back. This isn't over, he said, pointing at me. You think paper protects you? Men like Derek don't retreat. They reposition. For the first time since this began, I wondered whether clarity had invited retaliation. Andrew stood. Sit down, or this meeting ends. Derek froze, breathing hard, eyes burning. My daughter didn't look at him. That was the moment she saw him clearly. I stood. 30 days, I said. No access, no leverage. If there are threats when I retrieve my belongings, I call the police. This isn't emotion. It's procedure. Derek's mouth tightened, not in anger, but calculation. I turned to my daughter. This is your choice. Leave with him or leave because of him. I gathered my papers. Andrew opened the door. The meeting ended. In the hallway, my daughter stopped walking. Behind us, Derek's voice dropped not to a shout, but a whisper. Low. Controlled. Legal. Reputational. Personal. A promise of consequences designed to travel quietly. I didn't turn around. Before we reached the elevator, my phone vibrated. One message. From an unknown number. He hadn't waited 30 days. The message was short. Too short. No greeting. No explanation. Just a sentence that felt deliberately unfinished, like the opening move in a game I hadn't agreed to play. You should really check your email. I didn't reply. Vague threats are invitations to panic. I don't accept those. Instead, I slowed my steps, pressed the elevator button, and listened as the doors closed. The soft chime sounded louder than it should have. My daughter stood beside me, arms wrapped around herself. Was that him? She asked. I don't know, I said, and that uncertainty sat heavier than confirmation. Back in my hotel room, I set my purse down and didn't turn on the lights. The city glowed faintly through the curtains. I opened my laptop. The email was already there. Subject: concern regarding property and capacity. Recognition arrived before fear. This wasn't anger. This wasn't desperation. This was repositioning. The email was addressed to Andrew Sterling and copied to a social services intake address, a property management firm, and my daughter. It expressed concern. Concern about my recent decisions. Concern about whether I was under undue stress. concern about my capacity to manage assets. The language was careful, polite, professional, dangerous. At 4:17 p.m., a voicemail appeared from an unfamiliar county number. "We've received a report and would like to follow up." Threat had become process. For the first time since this began, my certainty fractured not in belief, but in cost. Clarity doesn't protect you. It exposes you. I forwarded everything to Andrew with one sentence. "He's building a record." His reply came immediately. "Do not respond. This is an attempt to trigger oversight. Men like Derek don't shout when systems can whisper for them." My phone buzzed again. My daughter. "He sent it to my supervisor," she said quietly. "He said you're unstable, that this eviction proves it." I closed my eyes. "He's trying to scare you," I said. "It's working," she admitted. That was the moment I understood something uncomfortable. Fear makes people honest but not loyal. She wasn't betraying me, but under enough pressure, she might cooperate. She might explain. She might soften facts to make things easier. And ease is where damage begins. "Listen carefully," I said. "If anyone asks, you say nothing without counsel. Not to HR, not to social services, not to him." There was a pause. "Okay," she said, but her voice wavered. After the call, I turned on the lamp. The room came into focus orderly, quiet, deliberate. I took out my notebook and wrote 3 words at the top of a clean page. Documentation. Witnesses. Timeline. I called Andrew. "He's alleging incapacity," I said. "Yes," he replied. "Which means we accelerate." "What does that mean?" I asked. "It means visibility," he said. "Medical clearance if necessary. Financial transparency. And one more thing." "What?" "You stop being background." That landed. For years, I had survived by shrinking, by staying agreeable, quiet, useful. Derek had counted on that inertia. He had mistaken restraint for weakness. "I won't disappear," I said. "Good," Andrew replied. "Because tomorrow, things get loud." After we hung up, I stood by the window. Traffic flowed below, indifferent and steady. Somewhere, Derek was making calls, writing emails, framing a story. My phone buzzed again. A message from my daughter. He says, "If you don't stop, he'll make sure everyone knows what kind of mother you really are. Not irresponsible, not unwell, cruel, abandoning, unfit." That was the real threat. Not the house, not the money. My identity. I stared at the screen, feeling something settle, not fear, but resolve. Because when someone attacks your name, they've already run out of leverage. By morning, Derek's story wouldn't just be circulating. It would be knocking on doors. I was halfway through my coffee when the knock came. Not the polite tap of hotel service. Not the confident rap of a lawyer. 3 measured knocks. Practiced. Patient. The kind that assumes you will open the door. For a brief second, I considered letting it ring out, not from fear, but from calculation. Every system reads compliance as cooperation. Silence, however, creates its own suspicion. I stood, smoothed my blazer, and opened the door. 2 women stood in the hallway. One older, one younger. Clipboards held close to their chests like shields. "Good morning," the older one said. "County Services. We're following up on a report." So Derek hadn't waited. "Of course," I said, stepping aside. "Please come in." The younger woman hesitated just a fraction. Calm unsettles people expecting chaos. They entered. The room was orderly. Bed made. Documents stacked neatly on the desk. Laptop open to bank statements. No clutter, no confusion. We received concerns regarding your well-being, the older woman said carefully. And recent property decisions. Yes, I replied. I expected that. She blinked. You did? When leverage disappears, I said evenly. People look for authority to borrow. The younger woman wrote quickly. Are you under pressure? The older one asked. Feeling overwhelmed? No, I said. I'm focused. They exchanged a glance. Do you feel coerced by anyone? Yes, I said. By a man attempting to regain control after losing access to my property. That answer landed differently. I gestured to the desk. I've prepared a timeline. Financial records. Legal notices. You're welcome to review them. Silence. They asked questions. Dates. Names. Sequences. I answered without emotion. No defense. No justifications. Only facts. When they left, the older woman paused. For the record, she said quietly, this appears to be a civil dispute, not a welfare issue. I appreciate precision, I replied. The door closed. And only then did my hands shake. Not from fear, but from adrenaline with nowhere to go. I sat down slowly, breathing through it. Authority doesn't erase the body's reaction. It only postpones it. My phone buzzed. My daughter. They came to my office, she said breathlessly. HR pulled me aside, asked if you were okay. And what did you say? I asked. There was a pause. I said I didn't know, she admitted. That things were tense. That was the fracture. Fear doesn't make people dishonest. It makes them imprecise. Listen carefully, I said. From now on, you say nothing without counsel. Even uncertainty becomes evidence. I didn't mean to. I know, I said. Intent stops mattering once systems start moving. After we hung up, an email arrived. Account status update. Under review. By afternoon, my bank account was flagged. Not frozen. Not seized. Reviewed. A small loss but visible. Real. The cost had begun. Andrew's email followed minutes later. County visit confirms malicious reporting. Legally helpful. Personally escalating. Expect further pressure. Men like Derek don't stop when confronted. They shift targets. Another message came in from a neighbor. Derek said you weren't well. Just checking. The story was spreading. I replied once. I'm well. Legal matter underway. Then I stopped responding. That evening, I did exactly what Andrew advised. I emailed my former department. I notified the bank formally. I requested written confirmation from my physician. Paper against whispers. Still something felt wrong. Not Derek. Not the county. Not the systems. My daughter hadn't called back. At 9:47 p.m., a notification appeared, not sent to me. A message preview accidentally mirrored through a shared cloud account she hadn't disabled. 2. Derek. Text. I told them you're stressed but not dangerous. Please don't do anything tonight. I stared at the screen. Not betrayal. Worse. Negotiation. She didn't warn me. She tried to manage him. I didn't confront her right away. That was instinct to call, to demand, to explain what she'd done without realizing it. But instinct is loud. Strategy is quiet. Derek fed on reactions. He needed motion to stay relevant. So I waited. The message glowed faintly on my screen. I told them you're stressed but not dangerous. Please don't do anything tonight. She had tried to calm him. And in doing so, she had confirmed exactly what he wanted, that she would translate for him, soften edges for him, Buy him time. Men like Derek don't want peace. They want intermediaries. At 7:12 the next morning, my phone rang. Unknown number. I answered. Mrs. Everson, a man said smoothly. Martin Harley. I represent Derek. Of course he did. What can I do for you? I asked. Nothing, he replied. This is a courtesy call. Derek is concerned about escalation. He believes matters can still be resolved quietly. Quietly meant privately. Privately meant unevenly. I'm represented, I said. Direct everything to my attorney. A pause, then recalibration. Before I go, he said, your daughter asked me to pass something along. There it was. She's under strain, he continued. Derek is willing to step back temporarily if you reconsider the eviction. A short pause. Just to stabilize emotions. Stabilize meant stall. Stall meant access. No, I said. Another pause longer. In that case, he said carefully, Derek may explore other remedies. He already is, I replied. The call ended. 10 minutes later, my daughter called. Her voice was controlled in a way that worried me more than tears. He spoke to a lawyer, she said. He says this is spiraling. It is, I replied. And you helped it spiral. Silence. I was trying to keep him calm, she said. And you bought him time, I replied gently. Time is leverage. I called Andrew immediately after. His voice tightened when I explained. That message reset the clock, he said. It slows our filings. Not fatally, but enough for him to maneuver. A cost. Small, immediate, real. Back on the call with my daughter, she exhaled shakily. He asked me to forward something, she admitted. I closed my eyes. What? A draft statement, she said. Just notes. He said it wasn't official. He wanted my thoughts. Off record. Off balance. Over the line. And did you? I asked. Yes, she whispered. I didn't sign anything. I just clarified things. Fear doesn't make people cruel. It makes them cooperative. He also said, she continued, that if this keeps going, he'll claim you abandoned the house. Emergency occupancy. He says he can make it messy. That's not how the law works, I said. But it sounds like it could, she replied. And that was the problem. He wasn't trying to win legally. He was trying to exhaust emotionally. He also asked, she said, barely audible, if I could convince you to delay formally. Just a few days. He said it would show goodwill. Delay is never neutral. Delay is direction. No more, I said firmly. No messages, no clarifications, no favors disguised as kindness. She broke then, not loudly, quietly. He says he can't breathe, she whispered. That you're destroying his life. No, I said. I'm ending his access to mine. After the call, I sat very still. Because now I understood something essential. Derek wasn't panicking. He was organizing. And my daughter unintentionally, but undeniably had become a soft entry point. I opened my notebook and wrote one sentence across a clean page. No intermediaries. No pauses. No private explanations. Then I called Andrew. He's pushing emergency narratives and using third parties, I said. Including my daughter. Andrew didn't hesitate. Then we moved publicly. Not triumphantly. Not safely. Public moves don't just expose lies. They invite crowds. They invite interpretation. They invite backlash. Once we do that, I said slowly, there's no pulling it back. I know, Andrew replied. But silence is costing you more. I looked at the clock. 9:03 a.m. The day was already unstable. By noon, Derek's story would leave private channels and enter public view, where sympathy flips fast and damage doesn't ask who deserves it. At 9:47 a.m., Andrew sent one word: filed. No reassurance, no celebration, just confirmation that the line had been crossed. Publicly didn't mean loudly. It meant permanently. The filing wasn't dramatic, no press, no announcements. Just a clean motion entered into the system. Termination notice attached. Documentation indexed. Malicious reporting flagged. Sworn declaration submitted. Facts don't shout, they wait. Still, my stomach tightened. Once something becomes a record, it stops belonging to you. It belongs to whoever wants to interpret it. Andrew called minutes later. This protects you, he said. But it also exposes you. Who sees it first? I asked. Anyone watching, he replied. And Derek is watching. By 10:30 the consequences began to land. Not explosions. Signals. A former colleague emailed formal, distant. I'm stepping back from involvement. Hope you understand. At 11:02, my bank sent a notification. Outgoing transfers temporarily limited pending review. Not frozen. Restricted. Access narrowed. I forwarded the notice to Andrew without comment. Then, at 11:19, my daughter called. Her voice sounded hollow. HR issued a written warning, she said. Not disciplinary, yet. But they said my personal situation is now considered a professional risk. There it was. The first real loss. They reassigned one of my accounts, she continued. Just until things settle. Nothing dramatic. Nothing reversible on paper. But visible. I'm sorry, I said. So am I, she replied. And for the first time, she wasn't apologizing to me. By 11:48, Andrew forwarded an email chain Derek hadn't meant to circulate. The tone had changed. No courtesy. No concern. Now it was defensive accusations of overreach, complaints about reputational harm. When people stop arguing facts, they argue optics. He's angry, Andrew said. And that makes him sloppy. At 12:07 my phone rang. Derek. I didn't answer. He left a voicemail. You've humiliated me, he said calmly. People are asking questions. Think about your daughter, this is going to follow her. I saved it. At 12:28 my daughter texted again. Someone in HR asked if you're mentally fit to manage assets. That was the collision. Institutions don't gossip. They record. I stared at the message longer than I should have. Public action had finally reached her. At 12:41, Andrew sent one last note before court lunch. A hearing date is likely to be set fast. Judges don't like manufactured emergencies. I checked the time. 12:52 p.m. Another bank alert appeared. Transfer limitation confirmed. Review in progress. 2 systems. 2 pressures. No way back. Outside, sirens passed. Somewhere else, another crisis unfolded. Mine had simply crossed into official memory. I sat in the quiet hotel room. Documents spread across the desk, realizing something I hadn't before. This wasn't just escalation. This was alignment. Someone powerful had begun paying attention. By the next morning, the case wouldn't belong to Derek or to me. A judge would. The notice came at 6:14 a.m. Not by mail. Not by phone. An automated email from the court clerk flat. Procedural, indifferent. Emergency hearing scheduled. 9:30 a.m. 3 hours. That was all the urgency someone had convinced the system this deserved. Andrew called seconds later. He pushed hard, he said. Alleged instability. Alleged abandonment. Enough noise to justify an emergency slot. And the judge? I asked. Unknown, he replied. Which means we assume nothing. I stood slowly, my body steady, my thoughts already moving ahead of my hands. What do you need from me? I asked. Precision, he said. And a decision. At 7:02 a.m., my daughter called. She wasn't careful anymore. They reassigned my desk, she said, voice breaking. HR told me legal might need a statement. Derek says if I explain that you're confused, this can all stop. That's not true, I said. I know, she whispered, but they don't. Fear had crossed a line from emotional to institutional. They told me not to discuss family matters at work. She continued. People are watching me now. I closed my eyes. Listen to me, I said slowly. In that courtroom, I will tell the truth. Fully. I won't shape it to protect anyone, including you. Silence. So you're choosing the court, she said. I'm choosing a future where this doesn't repeat, I replied. She hung up. That hurt more than Derek ever could. At 8:40, Andrew and I sat outside the courtroom. The hallway smelled faintly of disinfectant and old paper. People passed without looking at us, the luxury of anonymity I was about to lose. You ready? He asked. I don't think readiness applies anymore, I said. Only accuracy. Inside, the courtroom was smaller than I expected. No audience, no drama. Just a raised bench and a judge who looked efficient rather than sympathetic. Derek was there. He avoided my eyes. His attorney spoke first, measured, practiced. Stress. Abrupt decisions. A vulnerable elder acting under emotional strain. A request for temporary protections while facts were clarified. The judge nodded, expression unreadable. When Andrew stood, he didn't argue emotion. He presented sequence. Dates, messages, the county visit, the bank flags, the voicemail, the draft statement routed through my daughter. The judge listened without interruption. Then she turned to me. Mrs. Everson, she said evenly, do you understand that your actions have already had professional consequences for your daughter? The question wasn't gentle. It wasn't kind. Yes, I said. I do. Andrew's pen paused. And knowing that, she continued, you chose to proceed publicly instead of seeking a private resolution. Yes. She made a note. Are you currently under treatment for any condition that could impair judgment? She asked. Procedural. Skeptical. Necessary. No, I replied, and I can provide documentation. I've reviewed what was submitted, she said. I'm asking about your own assessment. I am capable, I said, and I understand the consequences. She leaned back. Fingers steepled. Courts don't just resolve disputes, she said. They create records. Records follow families. I felt Andrew shift beside me. If I rule today, she continued, someone in this room will feel exposed, possibly betrayed. Her eyes didn't go to Derek. They stayed on me. I'm not prepared to issue an order yet, she said. But before I do, I require one additional statement. The room tightened. I need a sworn declaration, she said slowly, clarifying whether your daughter acted independently or at your direction. Andrew inhaled sharply. I didn't. My fingers tightened once on the edge of the table, then went still, deliberate, as if my body understood before my mind did. If I spoke now, the words wouldn't just explain the past. They would enter the record. They could not be amended. They could not be withdrawn. They would follow every future proceeding. The judge's pen hovered above the page. "I'm not asking for speculation," she said. "I'm asking for attribution." Waiting. The judge wasn't asking for proof. She was asking me to name someone. In a way the court would never forget. The room waited. Not impatiently. Not kindly. The way institutions wait without concern for how long it takes you to bleed internally. The judge's pen hovered above the paper. Andrew sat perfectly still beside me. His breath measured. His eyes forward. Derek didn't move at all. He didn't need to. This moment didn't belong to him. It belonged to me. A sworn declaration. Whether my daughter acted independently or at my direction. If I named her, the record would absorb it without mercy. If I shielded her, the record would bend, and bendings always return with interest. I took one slow breath. Then another. "I'd like to answer carefully," I said. The judge nodded once. "Proceed." "My daughter did not act at my direction," I said evenly. "She acted under pressure applied deliberately by a man who understood that institutions listen more closely when concern comes from family." Andrew's hand stilled completely. Derek's jaw tightened just a fraction. I continued. "She forwarded messages, clarified drafts, spoke off the record," I said, using the words precisely because they were already documented. Not because she agreed with them, but because she was afraid of escalation. The judge made a note. "But," I added, "fear is not independence, and cooperation under pressure is not agency." Silence. I could feel the weight of what I was doing threading truth through a space narrow enough to cut. "So to be clear," the judge said, "you are not alleging misconduct by your daughter." "No," I replied. "I am alleging manipulation by my son-in-law." Derek shifted then, just enough to be noticed. Andrew stood. "For the record," he said calmly, "Mrs. Everson's statement clarifies attribution without assigning culpability. We submit supporting exhibits." The judge raised a hand. "I have enough." She turned back to me. "Mrs. Everson," she said, "do you understand that this declaration becomes part of the permanent court record and may be referenced in future proceedings involving your family?" "Yes," I said. "And you stand by it?" "I do." She nodded slowly. "Then the court finds no basis for emergency occupancy," she said, "nor for a finding of incapacity at this time." Derek's attorney opened his mouth. The judge held up a finger. "However," she continued, "I am issuing a temporary non-interference order. Mr. Derek is prohibited from direct or indirect contact with Mrs. Everson regarding property, finances, or third-party reporting. All communication goes through counsel." Andrew exhaled quietly. Derek did not. "This order," the judge added, "will be entered today." Entered. Recorded. Unmovable. She closed the file. "We are adjourned." The gavel tapped once. That was it. No triumph. No release. Just consequence. Outside the courtroom, the hallway felt narrower than before. Andrew turned to me. "You did it," he said quietly. "I told the truth," I replied. "That's not the same thing." My phone vibrated. A message from my daughter. HR withdrew the warning. Legal said the court order clarifies everything. A small mercy. A delayed one. Then another message came in unknown number. "You think this is over?" I didn't reply. Because for the first time I didn't need to. The record had spoken. Derek had lost access to me, to my home, to my intermediaries. But something else had shifted too. My daughter would never unhear what I'd said in that room. I had protected her, but not from the truth. That kind of protection changes relationships. Not always for the better. Andrew walked me to the elevator. You understand, he said. This won't make him quiet. It will make him careful. I know, I said. As the doors closed, I looked at my reflection in the metal. I looked older, not weaker. Older like someone who was paid in full. The court took his voice, but it didn't take his resentment. The first sign wasn't a threat. It was absence. At 8:06 a.m., I tried to log into my bank account. The page loaded, then refreshed, then displayed a polite, neutral message. Access temporarily unavailable. Please contact your institution. No alarm. No explanation. Just friction. I called the number on the back of the card. After 6 minutes of recorded music, a calm voice answered. Mrs. Everson, your account is under secondary compliance review. I was reviewed yesterday, I said. Yes, she replied. This is a continuation. Continuation. That word sat heavier than suspension. It meant something had been added, not removed. Has there been a new filing? I asked. I can't see the source, she said carefully. Only that additional information was received overnight. I thanked her and ended the call. Derek hadn't violated the order. He'd gone around it. At 8:41 my daughter texted. HR asked me not to come in today. They said legal needs time. No accusation. No discipline. Just distance. I typed back. Did they say why? 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. They said an external inquiry mentioned my name. There it was. Not Derek's voice. Not his Lawyer. A system echoing something quietly dropped into it. At 9:12, Andrew called. Before you say anything, I said, tell me this, did he file something new? No, Andrew replied. Worse, he didn't file at all. I closed my eyes. He contacted third parties, Andrew continued. Banks, employers, concerned acquaintances. He's framing this as ongoing instability rather than a dispute. And the order? I asked. He's skirting it, Andrew said. No direct contact. No explicit instruction. Just suggestions. Suggestions were harder to challenge than threats. By 10 o'clock, the hotel receptionist called my room. Mrs. Everson, there's a gentleman here asking if you're feeling well. He says he's a family friend. I felt my jaw tighten. Describe him, I said. She hesitated. Mid-40s. Very polite. Says he's worried. Worried was Derek's favorite costume. Tell him I'm unavailable, I said, and note his name. I hung up and sat on the edge of the bed. This was what Andrew meant by careful. Not loud retaliation. Distributed pressure. Systems don't defend you when the input sounds reasonable. At 10:27, my phone buzzed again. A message from my daughter. He told them I'm scared you're spiraling again. Again. A word chosen for history, it implied. I called her immediately. He asked me to confirm things, she said before I could speak. Just general concerns. I didn't deny them either. Fear makes people hedge. That's enough, I said. You're not speaking to anyone else. Not HR, not him, not his friends. They already put me on administrative leave, she said softly. Paid, but still. Another loss. Another mark. Andrew called back within minutes. This is still salvageable, he said, but only if we move faster than his narrative. How? I asked. We document interference, he replied, and we escalate jurisdictions. My stomach tightened. That means more exposure, I said. Yes, Andrew said, and fewer places for him to hide. By noon, 3 things were in motion. A formal notice sent to the bank disputing the new input. A letter to HR outlining indirect harassment via third parties, and a request filed for a compliance review of Derek's conduct post-order. Paper against pressure. Still, something bothered me. Derek hadn't messaged again. No gloating. No commentary. Silence was his confidence. At 12:44, the silence broke not from him, but from someone else. A number I didn't recognize. "Mrs. Everson," a woman said. "This is Linda Carr. I'm a mediator. Derek asked me to reach out." I laughed once short, disbelieving. "I'm represented," I said. "Of course," she replied smoothly. "This isn't negotiation. It's clarification." Clarification was becoming a pattern. "What clarification?" I asked. She paused. "He's concerned the public record may not reflect the full picture," she said. "Specifically regarding your daughter's involvement." My grip tightened around the phone. "Any communication goes through my attorney," I said. "Understood," she replied. "I'll let him know you declined to clarify." Declined. As if truth were optional. I ended the call and stared at the wall. Derek wasn't trying to overpower me. He was trying to outlast me. And he'd chosen his battlefield carefully. My credibility, my daughter's stability, and systems that move slowly on purpose. My phone buzzed one last time that afternoon. A message from my daughter. "He says if this keeps going, he'll tell them everything, even things you don't remember saying." I stood up. That was it. Not escalation. Not negotiation. War. By the end of the day, Derek hadn't broken the order. He'd rewritten the rules around it. I didn't sleep. Not because I was afraid, but because anger had finally finished rearranging itself into purpose. Fear scatters thoughts. Anger lines them up. By dawn, I understood Derek's real strategy. He wasn't trying to win. He was trying to keep things unclear. As long as there was fog about my capacity, my intent, my memory, he could keep feeding doubt into systems faster than they could clear it. Questions move slower than answers. He was counting on that lag. So I decided to remove the fog entirely. At 6:38 a.m. I called Andrew. "I'm done responding piece by piece," I said. "I want one answer that ends the questions." There was a pause. Then, "You're talking about a voluntary affidavit?" "Yes," I said. "One document. Comprehensive. Sworn. No gaps for interpretation." Andrew didn't caution me. That's how I knew it was risky. "Once it's filed," he said, "you don't get to manage how it's read." "I know," I replied. "That's why it has to be complete." Filed didn't mean loud. It meant permanent. By 7:20, I was at my physician's office. Not for evaluation for language. I had already requested records. Now I requested clarity. Capacity. Cognition. Independence. No qualifiers. No soft edges. He read the draft and nodded slowly. "This doesn't just answer concerns," he said. "It removes oxygen. People don't panic when they're wrong. They panic when there's nothing left to argue." By mid-morning, Andrew and I assembled the spine of the affidavit. Timeline. Exhibits. Third-party contacts logged. The mediator call identified plainly not as outreach, but as an attempt to influence the public record before it hardened. "Add this," Andrew said. "Any effort to clarify the record outside formal proceedings is declined." "That draws a boundary," I said. "Yes," he replied. "And boundaries tend to provoke testing." At 10:12 we filed. No press release. No explanation. Just a clean document entering the docket voluntary, comprehensive and devastatingly dull. The kind of thing manipulators hate because it doesn't argue. It settles. 10 minutes later, my bank called. Not to restrict. To restore. Secondary review closed, the woman said. Documentation resolved our concerns. A small shift, but real. At 10:41, Andrew forwarded an internal HR note Derek had tried to influence. We're declining involvement. Court filings supersede informal outreach. For the first time, one of his calls had been documented as interference. Not punished. Not yet. But logged. At 11:06, my daughter called. Her voice sounded steadier, but not relieved. He's furious, she said. But HR told me something else. What? They said his outreach crossed a line, she replied. They put it in writing. A micro win. Fragile. Conditional. But real. I closed my eyes not in relief, but in restraint. For the first time since this began, I wanted to break something not out of panic, but because restraint was starting to feel like permission. At noon, the mediator called again. I'm just checking whether, she began. This isn't negotiation, I said calmly. The record is complete. A pause. I understand, she said. I wanted to reach out before the narrative solidifies. There it was. Not peace. Preparation. He's trying to reframe before he's defined, I said. She didn't deny it. I'll advise him, she replied carefully. At 12:37, a message came in from Derek. Not angry. Not threatening. You didn't have to make it so final. Final. That word told me everything. I forwarded the message to Andrew. No response. Responses feed endurance. What I'd taken from Derek wasn't access or sympathy. It was plausibility. By early afternoon, the silence around me changed texture. Fewer inquiries. Fewer concerns. Systems prefer finished stories. But I didn't mistake quiet for safety. Containment doesn't end people like Derek. It teaches them where the walls are. And walls are only useful if there aren't exits you haven't seen yet. My daughter came by the hotel around 4. She looked tired but clearer. I didn't realize how much I was buffering for him, she said. Until I stopped. That's what fog feels like, I replied. Like responsibility. At 6:02, Andrew sent one last update. Judge acknowledged the affidavit. Order stands. Any further third-party outreach strengthens enforcement. Strengthens. Not ends. I set my phone down and looked out at the city. It looked unchanged. That's how you know control is temporary. It doesn't announce itself. Derek hadn't been silenced. He'd been contained. And containment doesn't destroy people like him. It teaches them where the limits are, and which ones they still want to test. The fog was gone, which meant Derek had only 2 options left. Disappear, or make one last move so visible it couldn't be reframed. He chose the kind of visibility that comes after preparation. I learned it had gone public the way most damage does quietly, and without asking permission. At 7:18 a.m., my phone began vibrating in short, uneven bursts. Not calls. Notifications. Messages from people who hadn't spoken to me in years. A former neighbor. An old colleague. Someone whose number I didn't recognize, but who knew my name. Are you okay? Just saw something online. Is this about your family? Online meant one thing. I opened my laptop. The headline wasn't angry. It was worse concerned. Court records raise questions in family property dispute. No names in the title. No accusations. Just enough ambiguity to invite interpretation. Derek hadn't violated the order. He'd fed the public record to someone who knew how to read between lines. The article quoted filings selectively. A line about family involvement. A paragraph about third-party concerns. It never said I was unstable. It didn't have to. It ended with a sentence that made my jaw tighten. Sources familiar with the matter say more context is expected. Expected meant pending. Pending meant moldable. Andrew called within minutes. He didn't leak, he said. He curated. Who? I asked. Local blogger turned legal explicable, Andrew replied. Credible enough to be shared. Vague enough to stay protected. By 8:02, the post had been shared dozens of times. By 8:30, it had comments. Some sympathetic. Some speculative. Some cruel in the way only strangers can be. At 8:41, my daughter called. They pulled me into HR again, she said. Not disciplinary. They just asked if I wanted to take personal leave. Translation: You're becoming a liability. After we hung up, I noticed something else. A message I'd sent earlier to someone I trusted. Someone who knew me well still unread. They didn't ask what happened. They didn't ask if I was okay. They just stopped replying. That was the first real cut. At 9:10, Andrew forwarded me a second post. This one wasn't cautious. It framed the story as a warning. About elder autonomy. About families weaponizing courts. It quoted an unnamed mediator. It suggested there were disagreements about recollection. Disagreements about recollection. That phrase lit something sharp and unmistakable. For the first time since this began, anger burned hot, not panic, not strategy. Rage. Because he wasn't just questioning my decisions anymore. He was questioning my memory. I stood, paced once, then stopped. Breaking something would have felt good. I didn't. Control, at this stage, was restraint under fire. Andrew called again. This is the pivot, he said. Public narrative. If you stay silent, this version calcifies. And if I speak? I asked. Then you lose privacy, he said. But you regain authorship. Authorship. Derek had assumed I wouldn't want it badly enough. At 10:03, my phone buzzed with a message I hadn't expected. From the blogger. Happy to include your perspective if you'd like to clarify. Clarify. The same word, cleaned up and repackaged. I forwarded it to Andrew. He wants access, Andrew said. We don't give him that. Then what? I asked. Then we choose the venue. At 10:26 we did. Not an interview. Not a rebuttal. We released the affidavit complete, unedited, timestamped publicly, with a single line from counsel. The record speaks for itself. It wasn't persuasive. It was heavy. By noon, the tone shifted. Speculation slowed. Commenters stopped guessing and started reading. The second post was updated. The mediator quote vanished. A correction appeared. Editor's note. Prior language has been revised for accuracy. Revised. At 12:19, Andrew texted me. Pattern emerging. One outlet declined to continue the story. Another asked Derek's attorney for confirmation he couldn't provide. The blogger stopped responding. This wasn't victory. It was resistance. At 1:07, my daughter texted. HR said I can return tomorrow. They asked for the public filing. A small repair, with edges still frayed. At 2:14, Derek finally posted publicly. Not angry, not defensive. Measured. Family matters deserve dignity. Some people choose courtrooms over conversations. I hope we can all remember compassion. Compassion. That word used like a shield. I closed my laptop. The story was no longer private. And it wasn't just legal now. It was moral. Simplified. sharpened. Once strangers decide who's right and who's cruel, someone always gets cast as the villain. And villains don't just lose arguments. They get punished. By evening, the internet hadn't just formed opinions. It had chosen sides. The first consequence didn't come from Derek. It came from someone who had never met me. At 8:22 a.m., I received an email with no greeting and no signature. You should be ashamed. That was it. No explanation. No context. Just judgment, delivered cleanly, like a verdict. I deleted it. Then another arrived. And another. By 9, my inbox had developed a pattern messages that began with concern and ended with accusation. People asking questions they didn't want answers to. People offering advice they hadn't been asked to give. One message stood out because it pretended to be reasonable. If you were really well, you wouldn't need courts to prove it. That was the danger of morality plays. They don't care about facts. They care about posture. They could watch me. They could judge me. But they could not make me agree. By mid-morning, Andrew called. This is still contained, he said. But it's shifting. What kind of shift? I asked. The kind where systems start reacting to noise, he replied. Informal checks. Soft inquiries. People wanting to understand. Understand meant assess. Assess meant decide. At 10:11, my daughter texted. Someone left a note on my car. I stared at the screen. What kind of note? I typed. A photo followed. A folded piece of paper under the windshield wiper. Families should protect their own. No name. No threat. Just a message meant to correct behavior. Anger surfaced, not wild, not reckless. Controlled. Purposeful. Document it, I told her when she called. Photo. Time. Location. Then do nothing else. This feels unreal, she said. Like people think they're entitled to an opinion. They think they're entitled to enforcement, I replied. By noon, the story mutated again. A radio segment discussed elder autonomy disputes. No names, no facts. Just a template where any woman could be inserted. When stories go abstract, punishment becomes flexible. At 12:46, Andrew forwarded something new. A cease and desist letter unsigned, poorly drafted, accusing me of weaponizing legal systems to damage family unity. It's meaningless legally, he said. But it's useful socially. Useful how? I asked. It signals permission, he replied. To intervene. At 1:30, I stepped outside briefly. The air felt different, not hostile, but attentive. A woman slowed as she passed me. Looked twice. Looked away. Visibility had crossed into scrutiny. Back inside, my phone buzzed. You won. Why keep humiliating him? Humiliating again. That word people use when consequences feel unfair. I forwarded it to Andrew. Good, he said. That's harassment. We log it. At 2:18, something else shifted. A small but coordinated online group began sharing screenshots filings highlighted selectively. I was described as cold, then controlling, then calculating. None of them mentioned Derek's actions. That omission wasn't accidental. By 3, my daughter called again. My supervisor suggested remote work, she said. Just until things calmed down. Another loss. Quiet. Polite. Documented nowhere. Andrew called minutes later. There's something else, he said. We're seeing pushback. From where? I asked. From him, Andrew replied. 2 organizations declined to engage after his outreach was reviewed. One noted patterned interference. For the first time all day, something landed on his side. Not loudly, but officially. At 4, the hotel manager knocked on my door. There's been a concern, he said carefully. A guest reported unusual behavior. Unusual? What behavior? I asked. They said they were worried about your safety, he said. And others. I didn't argue. I smiled once, not kindly. Then please document the report, I said, and contact your legal department, because someone just attempted to misuse a welfare check. His posture changed. That was the boundary. I closed the door and called Andrew immediately. This just crossed from commentary to action, I said. Yes, he replied. And that matters. Why? I asked. Because misuse of concern is traceable, he said. And it doesn't land where Derek thinks it does. I looked at my phone messages stacked, opinions multiplying. This wasn't chaos. It was a pattern. And patterns cut both ways. By nightfall, I wasn't reacting anymore. I was documenting. At 7:04 a.m., I filed a formal complaint. Not a statement. Not a request. A complaint documented, time-stamped, and routed through the agency that handles misuse of welfare checks and third-party harassment. Names attached. Dates listed. Screenshots included. I didn't debate whether it was too much. I didn't wait to see if things calmed down. I made something stop. By 7:19, the hotel manager called back. Our legal department reviewed the incident, he said. We've documented the report as unfounded and flagged the source. Thank you, I said. Please preserve everything. There was a pause. Then, we already are. That was the sound of a boundary taking hold. They could watch me. They could judge me. But they could not make me agree. And they could not keep intervening without consequence. Andrew called at 7:32. You did the right thing, he said. Now we let the systems do what they're designed to do. And Derek? I asked. He just created a paper trail. He can't cure it, Andrew replied. 2, actually. By 8:10, the first consequence landed. The mediator emailed Andrew, not me. Please confirm all future communication should cease. We were not advised of a formal complaint. Andrew replied with one line. You are now. At 8:27, my bank sent a follow-up confirmation. Account fully restored. Prior inputs marked non-credible. Non-credible. That phrase didn't erase the review. It framed it. At 9:03, my daughter called. Her voice sounded steadier than it had in days. HR reversed the remote work suggestion, she said. They said external pressure compromised neutrality. External pressure. They also asked me to forward anything else I receive, she added. Directly to legal. I closed my eyes, not in relief, but in focus. This wasn't safety yet. It was traction. At 9:44, Andrew forwarded a notice from the court clerk. Addendum received. Pattern of third-party interference noted. Not ruled. Not punished. Noted. Patterns don't accuse. They accumulate. At 10:18, Derek tried once more. Not directly. A concerned acquaintance emailed Andrew, suggesting mediation before irreversible damage. Andrew replied with the docket number and a sentence stripped of tone. Further contact will be appended to the record. 10 minutes later, the acquaintance withdrew. At 11:06, something shifted online. The same account that had amplified commentary posted a quiet update. Correction. Prior claims regarding safety concerns were unsubstantiated. No apology. No explanation. Just retreat. At noon, Andrew called again. He's being advised to stop, he said. By who? I asked. 2 attorneys, he replied. Neither of them are his. I leaned back. That was the blowback. not dramatic. Constraining. At 12:41, a message arrived sent through counsel, not directly. Mr. Derrick acknowledges the current orders and confirms future compliance as advised. No warmth, no concession. Compliance outsourced. I didn't respond, because this wasn't about intention anymore. It was about how long the record could speak without me. At 1:22, the hotel emailed, "We've updated your profile to restrict third-party wellness reports without verification." Another quiet barrier installed. By mid-afternoon, the noise thinned. Messages slowed. Threads lost momentum. Outrage moved on, as it always does. But records don't. My daughter came by around 4. She looked tired but upright. "I didn't realize how fast things change once someone wrote it down," she said. "That's because writing doesn't erase," I replied. "It remembers." She nodded. "Do you think this follows us?" "Yes," I said, "just not loudly." At 6:08, Andrew sent one final update. "Any further contact triggers automatic enforcement escalation." Automatically. I set the phone down and stood by the window. The city moved the way it always had, indifferent, intact. This wasn't a victory. It was a ceasefire with residue. Derrick hadn't apologized. He hadn't admitted anything. But he'd learned something irreversible. Concern can be weaponized once. After that, it leaves fingerprints. The line held. But lines don't erase what crossed them. The first sign wasn't an attack. It was a tension with weight behind it. At 8:13 a.m., Andrew forwarded me an email from someone I didn't know. A records editor at a regional paper known for publishing slowly and never apologizing. "Final review complete. Publication scheduled for 7 a.m. tomorrow." Scheduled. Not pending. Not tentative. Andrew called immediately. "This isn't validation," he said. "This is ignition." "What kind?" I asked. "The kind that forces response before lunch," he replied. By mid-morning, more requests arrived. Not interviews, not questions. Documents. The affidavit. The non-interference order. The bank's reversal notice. The logged misuse report. They weren't checking accuracy. They were aligning contradiction. Truth doesn't argue once timelines lock. At 10:42, my daughter called. "They contacted my office," she said. "Not HR. Directly." "What did they ask?" I said. She hesitated. "Whether Derrick still represents the nonprofit publicly." That landed hard. "They said the board is meeting tonight," she added. "Emergency. Emergency." That was the first thing Derrick didn't think he could lose. The role that made him look principled while acting otherwise. At 11:19, Andrew forwarded a notice. One advocacy group that had amplified Derrick's framing had removed its entire page. No explanation. No revision. Gone. Allies don't vanish unless they see what's coming. At noon, Derrick's attorney emailed Andrew again. Short. Urgent. "We request an opportunity to clarify before publication." Andrew replied with a single sentence. Context was requested. It was declined. Declined. That wasn't editorial. That was procedural refusal. At 12:47, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. "This doesn't need to become public." No threat. No apology. Just panic pretending to be reason. I deleted it. Because the truth wasn't spreading anymore. It was approaching. At 1:33, Andrew sent another update. 2 outlets confirmed Derrick attempted off-record intervention. Both declined. Cited conflict of interest. Conflict. That phrase doesn't trend. It sticks. At 2:05, my daughter texted again. Someone I trusted asked me if I knew he'd said those things publicly. What things? I typed. About protecting families. About transparency. I stared at the message. That was the crack. Not online. Not institutional. Personal. Someone who believed him had just realized the timing didn't match the virtue. By late afternoon, Andrew called again. He made a move, he said. What kind? I asked. He issued a statement, Andrew replied. Preemptive. Posted it himself. Denial? I asked. No, he said. Reframing. He forwarded it. A private family dispute is being mischaracterized for attention. I stand by my advocacy and welcome respectful dialogue. Advocacy. Dialogue. Words chosen too carefully. And too early. He posted this before the article, I asked. Yes, Andrew said. Which means he guessed what was coming. Guessing is not knowing. At 5:11, the editor emailed again. We've confirmed discrepancies between Derek's public statements and sworn filings. Article will include both. Include both. Side by side. That was the split screen. By evening, the air felt tight, not calm, not explosive. Pressurized. My daughter came by after work. She didn't sit. He asked me who I thought people would believe, she said. And? I asked. I said it stopped being about belief, she replied. When he posted before the facts were out, I nodded. That's when people realize they're no longer ahead of the story. I checked the time. 6:48 p.m. In 12 hours, Derek wouldn't be responding to me anymore. He'd be responding to evidence. Derek tried to speak before the truth did. The article went live at 7 a.m. Not loudly. Not cruelly. Precisely. By 7:03, Andrew called. He's responding already, he said. Where? I asked. Everywhere, he replied. And that's the problem. I opened the link. The headline didn't accuse. It compared. Advocacy claims clash with court filings and family dispute. Below it, a simple structure. What Derek said publicly. Quotes, dates, platforms. What Derek submitted under oath. Filings, timestamps, exhibits. Side by side. No commentary. No verdict. Just alignment. By 7:11, Derek's preemptive statement appeared at the bottom of the article, clearly labeled. Posted prior to publication. That detail mattered. Context belongs after facts. Before them, it looks like anticipation. At 7:18, an editor's note appeared. Mr. Derek declined to answer specific questions regarding timeline discrepancies. Declined. Andrew exhaled when he read it. That's the moment, he said. What moment? I asked. When the story stops being about interpretation, he replied, and starts being about choice. At 7:26, my daughter called. They removed him from the nonprofit's website, she said. Just his name. Quietly. No announcement. No explanation. But absence is its own language. At 7:34, Andrew forwarded a confirmation from the board. We're placing distance pending review. Distance. Not condemnation. Not loyalty. Distance is what institutions choose when clarity arrives faster than comfort. At 7:41, Derek posted again. Longer this time. Calmer on the surface. Tighter underneath. He accused the article of selective framing. Described filings as procedural necessities, reasserted his commitment to advocacy. Nothing false. Nothing new. Just words trying to regain altitude. At 7:52, Someone responded beneath it. A former colleague. If this is out of context, post the full timeline. No insults. No outrage. Just a request that couldn't be honored without reopening the contradiction. Derek deleted the post at 8:01. Screenshots circulated anyway. That wasn't humiliation. It was erosion. At 8:22, a short follow-up article appeared. Non-profit removes advocate amid review of public statements. No adjectives. No reaction quotes. Just consequence. By 8:30, messages came in again. But they sounded different. Not "Are you okay?" But I should have asked. And I didn't understand before. Someone who had stopped replying days earlier finally wrote, "I read it. I'm sorry." That mattered more than the article. At 8:47, Derek went quiet. No posts. No statements. At 9:02, his attorney issued a final line. "Our client will not be making further public statements at this time." At this time. That's what people say when they've realized silence is the least damaging option left. Andrew closed his laptop. "That's as far as this goes publicly," he said. "Anything else would feel forced." I nodded. This wasn't vindication. It was alignment. The story had corrected itself without needing me to push it further. My daughter came by later that morning. She didn't look relieved. She looked recalibrated. "He keeps asking who leaked," she said. "No one did," I replied. "He spoke." She nodded slowly. That was the end of the conversation about him. Not because it was finished, but because it no longer required our attention. Derek lost the role that made him legible to the world. But exposure doesn't erase people. It rearranges them. The morning after everything went quiet, I noticed the sound first. Not a new one. The absence of something familiar. No phone vibration against the table. No email chime cutting the air. No low tension humming in my chest the way it had for weeks. When I stood up, my shoulders dropped an inch on their own. I hadn't realized they'd been lifted for so long. Silence, but not the brittle kind. Andrew called once, briefly. "There's nothing else scheduled," he said. "No responses pending, no follow-ups." "Okay," I replied. When the call ended, I sat at the small table by the window and opened the affidavit one last time. Not to reread it, just to acknowledge it. My name. My words. Still there. I felt a brief, unexpected ache, not doubt, but grief. For the version of life where none of this had been necessary. Where records hadn't replaced conversations. Where precision hadn't been survival. I closed the file. Winning had never been the point. Surviving had been. And survival leaves residue. That afternoon, my daughter came by with groceries. She set the bags down and paused, as if waiting for instructions that no longer existed. We unpacked in silence. Cans on the shelf. Bread on the counter. Ordinary movements returning to their places. Halfway through, I picked up a box I didn't remember buying. "What's this?" I asked. She glanced over. "I don't know. It was on sale." We both smiled, then the smile faded. That small, shared quiet carried something underneath it. The knowledge that some things don't go back to their original shelves. You just make room around the gap. "I didn't realize how much of my energy went into translating him," she said finally. "Explaining, softening." "That wasn't translation," I said. "That was containment." She leaned against the counter. When it stopped, I felt lighter, and then guilty for feeling lighter. "That's not guilt," I said. "That's muscle memory." She nodded, slowly. Later, I went for a walk. No destination. No phone in my hand. The city moved the way it always had, unaware, unburdened. As I passed a cafe, I saw a familiar poster in the window. The same organization Derek used to speak for. Same logo. Same mission statement. Different name. He wasn't listed anymore. Not replaced. Just gone. That was what resigned looked like. Not punishment. Scale. Back at the hotel, one last email waited for me. From a former colleague who had gone quiet when things were loud. I read everything. I'm sorry I assumed instead of asking. My fingers hovered over the keyboard longer than I expected. Sending a reply felt heavier than it should have, like lifting something small that had settled deeper than its size suggested. I typed, "Thank you for reading. It mattered." And when I hit send, my chest tightened once then released. That was the feeling I'd been waiting for. Not relief. Completion. I thought about Derek then, not with anger, not even curiosity. Just the distant awareness you have of someone who once filled a room and now occupied only a corner of memory. Exposure hadn't destroyed him. It had reduced the amplification. He would go on. People like him always do. But without the borrowed authority, without the fog. He would have to speak at his own volume and live with how far it carried. That wasn't justice. It was proportion. As night settled, something finally aligned. Control isn't safety. Clarity isn't peace. But they let you choose what comes next without flinching. Tomorrow I would leave the hotel. I would return to routines that felt small and ordinary. That was the point. The story would continue without me tending it. Not silence. Release. Surviving didn't make me stronger. It made me accurate. And accuracy, once earned, doesn't argue. It endures. Some stories end with justice. Some end with apology. This one ended with accuracy. Not the kind that demands agreement. The kind that survives without witnesses. I didn't win because someone else lost. I won because I stopped carrying what wasn't mine to hold. Control didn't save me. Clarity did. And once clarity exists, it doesn't need defending. It doesn't argue. It doesn't chase understanding. It simply remains. If there's anything to take from this, it's not about law or family or conflict. It's this. When someone depends on confusion, your calm documentation is not cruelty. It's consent withdrawn. Turn on the lights. Name what's real. Then walk away without explaining yourself. Because the truth doesn't need a performance. It only needs space. Respect doesn't fade with age. Only the people who stop giving it do. When silence is mistaken for weakness, clarity becomes courage. You don't need to raise your voice to reclaim your place. You don't need revenge to restore dignity. And you don't need permission to protect what's yours. Sometimes the strongest response is to walk away, document the truth, and let time expose what force never could. Because dignity defended calmly outlives control, outlasts manipulation, and always finds its way back home. I'm truly grateful you stayed with me until the end and allowed me to share this story with you. If it meant something to you, let me know by tapping the like button and joining the channel. It helps more than you realize. I'd also love to hear from you. Tell me in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is right now. I always enjoy seeing how far these stories travel. If you'd like to support the channel even more, there's an option to leave a small contribution. Never expected, always appreciated. I post a brand new real-life story here every single day, so there's always something meaningful waiting for you. And now, a story that viewers loved the most is about to appear on your screen. Pick and keep listening.